My brother,
What's going on, bro? How you feeling?
I'm trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. I'm sorry that I'm late.
Now you all good. You all good.
What's going on?
I can't complain at all, man. I'm just staying out the way, just trying to, make sure my head on the swivel, with everything that's going on and just trying to do as best as I can.
Yes.
How's everything on your end?
Productive, busy, and just not waiting on somebody to hand me nothing. Just staying busy and doing what I got to do.
How has, with COVID and, obviously the riots, how has that like affected your work at all in any way, shape, or form?
Honestly, no. I'll be honest with you. The coronavirus pandemic for me has allowed me to slow down, but at the same time stay productive. The only thing that has really affected me and is literally travel, and I haven't really minded it, to be honest with you. I've been able to kind of sit down, focus, and really, the podcast has been quite efficient. Scoopy Radio, but to be honest with you, the writing hasn't changed. And a lot of people, I was dealing with, via phone, text, email anyway. So, to be very honest with you, it's really just been like a transitional, shift. Like, for me, like, for example, I was in Chicago during All-Star, and, I was on Fox 32 with Leon and Tia and more. And like, I had a bag. I was on the show, like literally an old Rocks bag. You see the backline in the back.
Yeah.
Like I had a bag with goodies and stuff I gave to them. I'll say just with sponsorship and things of that sort. There's been a transitional period. I was on the phone with them and I said to them, like, this was like in March, yo, send me a backdrop. That's been like in the back through all my live interviews and conversations and stuff like that. So, even though the things that are tangible have shifted, like product and things of that sort, it's still finding ways to do business and make things work.
Perfect, man. I love it. Let's start off with you, man. I mean, sports writer, columnist, you do it all. You do it all. You're not just a one trick pony. And you've been doing it. You started off at an early age. You started off at 12. Man, talk about like how it was to get your foot in the door to do exactly what you do now.
Well, it started when I was 12. I had a radio show with the Nets called Nets 11 Planet. It was on AM radio in New York, and basically auditioned. I was one of hundreds of kids who auditioned at Chelsea Pier, Manhattan, and basically got a second call back. And initially, it wasn't actually doing a radio show with the Nets. It was actually doing like commercials as a radio personality with the Crash Dummies. I don't know if you remember the Crash Dummies.
Yeah.
So what happened was the Nets were rebranding at the time. They were rebranding. They had a new logo. John Calipari was the head coach and the vice president of basketball operations. John Calipari, now the head coach in Kentucky, University of Kentucky. Basically, what happened was they called the Nets and then they interviewed me for, did I want to be this kid personality? Sure. And the first person I interviewed was Keith Van Horn, who was a rookie at the time. And that was the team. The Nets had like Jason Williams, Sam Cassell, Sherman Douglas. So this was my first year covering NBA basketball and being around radio. Was the Last Dance era, Bulls era. So I was around the Bulls then too.
Right.
It was pretty cool because it gave my first start. So like when I was a kid, I was around Chris Broussard when he was was covering the Nets and the Knicks for the New York Times. Adrian Wojnarowski was covering the Nets for the Bergen, New Jersey record newspaper, and Stephen A. Smith was covering the Sixers for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Okay. I was a kid seeing that, so I've been in the locker room with like Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Karl Malone. I remember when Steve Nash and Jason Kidd and Kevin Johnson were all on the same Phoenix Suns team. I was around that team. So they had a 3-point guard, situation there. I can't remember who the coach was at that time, but I just remember just that time and just being, around it and soaking it up and realizing that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Man, how did that impact you, like being at the age of 12? Because at the age of 12, we what, seventh grade. So it's just like you you really don't know like what you want to do. You just know if basketball is your thing, you just know like, man, I just want to play basketball. But actually being around in the locker room with those guys, like, how did that shape you to where you are now as far as like your growth?
Well, I mean, I think even before then, I had been around the game like that. Like my family ran and operated shoe stores in Harlem in the '60s, and we owned we the only black-owned athlete's foot in New York State.
Nice.
But then, in addition to that, we owned a men's shoe store called Men's Walkers. And my grandfather moved from Florida to New York for a better life. Shine shoes, saved, not even like was shining in the store, like was, all around Times Square in that area, shining shoes, saved his money. And, opened a shoe shine stand, turned into a shoe shine store. Then the shoe shine store next door there was a shoe store. And if you know anything about Harlem, Sylvia's Restaurant was there. The Apollo Theater was on 125th Street.
Yeah.
So that the foundation for me started, being in a sneaker store and seeing sneaker releases and having, Dominique Wilkins and Hakeem Olajuwon and the Wayans brothers and Mike Tyson all shopping at the store. I remember when I was a kid, late jazz musician Dizzy Gillespie, was shopping in the store. So like I met him when I was a kid. So just being around athletes and being around celebrities, that's always been natural to me. But and even just being around the game of basketball. My uncle. My late uncle Billy, he was a commissioner of parks at Riverbank State Park in Harlem. And basically, like anybody who's from New York City that played basketball knew my uncle. That was kind of like that bridge. So like Bernard King, Stephon Marbury, Kenny Smith, some of those other people. So for me, it just was always just being comfortable around athletes, knowing the game myself. And then finding, the niche and that connector, which was, hosting that radio show, with the Nets. So for me, just the level of just connecting, right place, right time. You don't see many young black men or black boys, getting those opportunities. Traditionally, you may see more white boys or white men getting those opportunities even now. So to have that opportunity, I don't take it for granted. But at the same time, it was a pretty cool experience because it was right in line with my purpose.
Perfect, man. Perfect. I love it. I definitely love to hear that. The reason I want to touch on that, like I said, it was at an early age. So those type of jobs, or not, I don't want to say jobs, those career paths are extremely hard to get into. Just a little bit about myself. When I went to college, I had a minor in sports broadcasting. So I always wanted to get into sports broadcasting, which is another question I want to ask you. For people that's watching this or people that's out there, what advice can you give them about being a sports broadcasting major? Because it seems like most retired athletes get those jobs, but don't necessarily have the fundamentals to go on TV and speak intellectually, but they have the experience and they know the game. So what words can you give to up and coming, sports analysts that want to be on TV, that go to school for it? What's some words for you?
Well, I think most importantly, I think, and I can only speak to my experience and my testimony. Even with me having an early start, I still had to work. And someone said in the comments, Gorgeous Chelsea said, "Yes, it's especially rare for females," and you're not lying. The females are a minority as well, black females as well. But to answer your question, I think it starts with finding a linchpin. Literally, finding the local angle. For me, I grew up in both northern New Jersey and New York City. So for me, like, I know New York, I know Jersey, and I went to college in the Philadelphia area, so I know Philly quite well also. So, if someone's from New York, someone's from Jersey, somebody's from Philly, if I don't know them directly, I know somebody who knows them and I can, reach out and touch. I consider Chicago an adopted city for me, just like Philly is. So for me, like, you're able to connect those dots. But I think more than anything else, I think a lot of times people want to go to school and their drive is to get on First Take and debate with Stephen A. Smith, and that shouldn't be your focus. Right. Having a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, one of my close friends from college, and I remember him saying this to me, and I reminded him, when I was in college, he told me, you know, we know you're going to make it, but like your goal should not be to be famous. Fame is a byproduct of success. And your goal should be to be the best you that you can be, and all of that will come. The money will come, the notoriety will come, the women will come, but you have to be mature in your approach, you know. And I think that starting locally, it pays dividends to be more specific and not just speaking in generics. I remember when I finished grad school in 2011, I graduated from Hofstra University with a master's degree in journalism. And, you know, 2008, the recession hit. By 2011, you know, we were all on that digital wave. And my thing was I wasn't necessarily chasing TV. I wasn't necessarily chasing radio. I was just chasing digital and was creating a brand. And, you know, I've had stops at CBS Radio. I've been a, you know, staff writer at The Source magazine. I've been at a myriad of other places. But what I'll say is specifically, I think find something that you're good at. You know, over the last couple of years, for me, I've been successful because I've had relationships with people within the Los Angeles Lakers organization, and I've known a lot of things that have been going on behind the scenes. You know, I attached myself to, or was in a good position with, you know, Zenny Optical, who's the official sponsor of the Chicago Bulls. And, you know, have developed relationships on the side of Zenny, but also, you know, within the Bulls and also with players within the Bulls. And then, you know, in the same breath, I come from the Nets background, back when they were in New Jersey. And, you know, I covered them when they were in Brooklyn during the 2012-2013 season, their inaugural season. One of the things I'm very proud of is, you know, back in 2013, I developed a good rapport with Kyrie Irving when he was in Cleveland. You know, and, you know, I visited Cleveland while he was there. I've, you know, have gone to his basketball camps locally, and, you know, I'm very in tune with what's going on. And you see what's going on with Kyrie right now. You know, I was rocking with him and his squad, you know, before LeBron got there. You know, and I think that local angle has allowed me to, you know, to continue to be blessed and flourish in that magnitude. So again, Kyrie Irving is from the New York metropolitan area. He's from New Jersey. He's from West Orange, New Jersey. His dad is from the Mitchell houses in the South Bronx. His godfather is Rod Strickland. My uncle Billy knew Rod Strickland, was a mentor to Rod Strickland when he was coming up. You know, so from him, Rod Strickland went to DePaul from, you know, Chicago connection. Right. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think it's just finding a local connection, building on it, because, you know, you pick the right person, you connect with the right people, and they trust you. You know, it's gonna continue to magnify.
Perfect. So in all networking and just loyalty,
and the follow up
and the follow up.
I think the follow up is more important than just networking.
Okay. Perfect. So you, I want to say after college, you had a chance to work with DJ Envy at Breakfast Club. Talk about talk about that experience just from back then to when you were in college to where they are now.
So when I finished grad school, I was living in my grandmother's basement apartment and was basically figuring out what was next. You know, I was writing at The Source magazine and had to make a choice of whether I was going to work for free or not. And, you know, they offered me the opportunity. I met some folks from The Source magazine at a function at the New York Times. And, you know, they interviewed me, and I'm like, cool, I could work for The Source magazine. It was a place or a magazine that I read growing up. And they said, we are interested in you. You have the resume, but we can't pay you. And something said, stick with it. And I'm glad I did. You know, and in my travels, basically, I, you know, was able to manage Envy's site, you know, like write articles for the site, you know, set the tweets, and just make sure that things were moving the way they were moving. And the person who connected those dots was actually somebody I went to Hofstra, which, you know, is on Long Island, which is a suburb of Queens. Envy's from Queens, and a lot of his, you know, his manager and other people, they're from Queens. And I was connected with, you know, them, and, you know, basically had the opportunity to make that happen. And, you know, it was cool, you know, basically just making sure the content was fresh on the site, making sure that, you know, the corresponding tweets were there. And, you know, it was a good opportunity while I was at The Source magazine to just continue to magnify and make my brand pop and learn.
Perfect. I actually watched the interview with you recently with Nate Robinson. probably one of the best interviews I've seen in a while.
Thank you.
Because Nate Robinson, he's a down to earth person, and he's gonna give you the raw.
Right.
And I think one topic that really stuck out the most was the Zach LaVine and Vince Carter comparison.
Mm-hmm.
On my take on it, I do agree that they definitely have similarities because when Zach came in the game, he wasn't that star player in Minnesota. He was out there, but he was just like a high flyer. Kind of like was when Vince came in the game. And I feel like Vince changed the game for Canada. Period. For but when Zach got to the Bulls and when Vince got to New Jersey, their games elevated and they were able to not just dunk, which it said a lot to when Zach LaVine actually declined the dunk contest, went to the 3-point contest. That made a lot of sense. What do you think? What do you see as a? I don't want to say personally, but as someone that's actually as a sports analyst, what do you see in Zach LaVine's game? Like, what would you cover if you're speaking on Zach LaVine?
Well, as you were talking, and naming different scenarios, the wheels in my head were definitely spinning. Number one, I do think that when Vince Carter became a net, it extended his career a great deal because he wasn't the star in New Jersey with the Nets. That was Jason Kidd's team. That was a team that was looking to kind of make a move after making it to back-to-back NBA Finals appearances. They also lost Kenyon Martin and were trying to find a way to get a high flyer on that team. Except Vince and Kenyon, logistically just played two different positions on the floor.
Right.
But I do think that Jason Kidd helped elevate his game because he also played alongside Richard Jefferson, and I think for parts of Vince's time in New Jersey, played along with big men like Jason Collins as well as Nenad Kristic. Nenad Kristic could spread the floor like no other. He's one of my favorite players to play with on 2K when I was in college. But I digress. I think that when you look at Zach LaVine, that notion of not electing not to play in the slam dunk or participate in the slam dunk contest. Me and Zach actually talked about that. I took a trip out to Philadelphia and sat down with him after the game, and we sat down and he talked about he was disappointed, and he said had he been voted in as a reserve in the All-Star game, he would have participated in the slam dunk contest. But the thing that that I took away from that, and he said that, was self-preservation in the sense that he wanted to enjoy All-Star Weekend, it being in Chicago, but also not just, he wanted to change that, the perception. My mom's been on me about using the narrative. She says I use it a lot, so I'm cognizant. But basically change the perception that, he's just a dunker. And when you look at guys in the NBA who came before him, I think one of Dominique Wilkins, as much as I've respected his game, I was always perplexed as to why injuries, derailed his career, although it was a respectable career. And I think one of the things that Vince Carter and Zach LaVine will have in common, besides longevity, is a consistent jumper. And I think that when you have a consistent jumper, you'll stay in the league for a long time. When you look at Ray Allen, at times, was rivaling Kobe Bryant the way he attacked the basket. But had Ray Allen not decided to make a change or elevate his game in some ways and had a consistent jumper, the Miami Heat might not have won that championship in 2013.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at Zach LaVine, I think you're seeing the early stages of that same process. The realization that adding a jumper, having had a torn ACL and having had surgery and having to rehab and come back, you got to do a little bit more if you want to stay in the league for a long time. And I think you've seen Blake Griffin make that transition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But do you think, as far as Blake Griffin, do you think it has hindered his success outside of the injuries? How he plays the game now in comparison to when he was with the Clippers?
I think him playing on the Clippers, he had the benefit of playing along of a gifted point guard in Chris Paul. And that Clippers system you had to run. Detroit is more of a half-court set, particularly when you're playing in a system where you have a slashing point guard in Derrick Rose. Currently, you've had to play with Reggie Jackson. Those guys didn't always see eye to eye on the basketball floor. at large. But I think when you look at just the ability for Blake Griffin to realize, having had injuries and, having played in a special system under Doc Rivers where you had to run, you get older, you don't always want to run like that. So I think, when I look at Blake Griffin, specifically, I believe Blake Griffin is everything Antonio McDyess was supposed to be.
I would have never thought Antonio McDyess, but I can see it though. And I know when you say that, I can definitely see the comparison.
Because McDyess had the ability to play with Jason Kidd, I believe, at some point.
Yeah.
But then he came to the Knicks and I think was hurt by the time he got there, or got hurt, and he just wasn't there. I remember when he came to the Knicks, there was this expectation that both he and Latrell Sprewell were going to, be this dynamic duo alongside Allen Houston, and it just didn't materialize. I think Blake Griffin, I think Detroit kind of gave him an opportunity to kind of rest himself. I mean, I remember, the Clippers wanted him to play in Los Angeles for the rest of his career, and when met him I was reading this today, they offered him an extension, and they basically had like a T-shirt or a mural which had him like with like some of the greats like Martin Luther King and like Malcolm X and some other people, and basically said like, we want you to last here forever. And then like 6 months later, they traded him.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but that Clippers team was just, they had their moment, and Golden State just was seemingly a young but better team by that point.
Yeah, definitely. What you did speak on, you spoke on Derrick Rose, and I know that you and Nate Robinson talked about Derrick Rose would love to come back home and play for Chicago. How do you think him and Zach LaVine will be in that backcourt for Chicago?
It's funny. I asked Nate that question because I actually had Kendall Gill on the Scoopy Radio podcast. I've known Kendall since I was a kid, Chicago legend, and University of Illinois legend as well. And he said to me he felt that Derrick Rose and Zach LaVine in the backcourt would do damage, and some people on Twitter were like, well, what about defense? And I think from a perspective of running people out the gym, there's always been an interest. If I'm not mistaken, Derrick Rose was on 670 to score, and then it mentioned that he's leaving all his options open. Once his contract with the Pistons is up. I know Chicago loves Derrick Rose, and Derrick Rose loves Chicago, Southside native. It would be cool to see, particularly because in that system with under Tibbs and Moore. I think Derrick Rose didn't really, he was hurt, and I think he was hurt before load management was a thing. And imagine if I think he came back early because he didn't want to let Chicago down. I think, it's a difficult juxtaposition, when you are from a certain city and then you have to play there, there's added expectation. Everybody can't do that. So, to directly answer your question, I think it's a situation where it would be great for the city of Chicago. I think you look at the Bulls; they hired their new general manager, Mark Eversley, who Kobe White told me he gets great vibes from him. You look at that culture. They have some cap space. I was with Anthony Davis at a Nike function back in November where he said, my contract is up at the end of the year. Someone asked him if he would want to play for the hometown Bulls. He said his contract's up at the end of the year. I am a free agent. I think everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion that Anthony Davis is just going to resign with with the Los Angeles Lakers. And I also think it depends on what the Lakers do. If they make it to the finals, if they, and more. I think the same thing applies to Giannis Antetokounmpo out in Milwaukee. So, when I look at the Bulls and just all of the different factors and things that are concerned, I do think that, the Bulls will have pieces. Zach LaVine called Kobe White a human flamethrower. And, I think he was third on the Bulls' depth chart in scoring. I think he averaged about 13 points per game this season. But I think when you look at the Bulls, I think, being young and being an attractive destination in the city of Chicago, I think the sky's the limit. But, Derrick Rose finding a way to come home would be great for the city, would be pandemonium at its finest.
Yeah, I agree. But with those two in the backcourt, possibly, what other pieces do you feel that the Bulls are missing?
I think that the Bulls are missing a viable, second option. I think I've said this throughout the course of the season. Okay, if not Zach LaVine, then who? Is it Lowry Markkinen? Is it like I like that he's young as a player, but I think he didn't necessarily fit in that system. At some points, the Bulls wanted to run. At some points, they just wanted to stand up and shoot threes. And I think that injuries have played dividends. Lowry's been hurt, off and on throughout the course of the season, and I just think they need a solid second tier or a complementary player. Okay, do we shift Zach LaVine to the one and just have him be a playmaker, and then you have a year 2 and year 3 just be slashers, because Zach LaVine fills up the stat sheet. He's not just a scorer, not just a high flyer. But I think I think that the Bulls are missing a couple of scorers. They need a healthy Lowry Markkinen. There's been talk. Other reporters have reported that the Knicks have had interest in Lowry Markkinen. I don't know. I haven't heard that, but I think that when you look at the center position or the power forward position, if you're looking to run, you need an Anthony Davis type guy, would spread that floor, and also who can shoot 3-pointers, but also he can play face up, back down, and fill up a stat sheet, superfluously. So I think the Bulls are missing a couple of key pieces to just be a playoff team, and I think you build on that. I think, if you take 3 to 4 years to just build a solid product on the floor, I think that's plausible.
Perfect. I think the Bulls is an interesting organization, to say the least. Mm-hmm. Very interesting in how they pick and choose and maneuver players around. Of course, it starts from up top. Ownership has not been the best, even since Jordan. It has not been the best. I honestly don't know what it's going to take for the Bulls to overcome that. Because I really feel like that's why a lot of players have skipped out on Chicago, a lot of top-tier players. We campaigned for Carmelo Anthony before the Knicks. So it was just it was so much going on with the Bulls, with the Bulls itself. It didn't work out when D-Wade came, even though he was on his very last leg. Mm-hmm. It's just been so much with the Bulls. I don't know.
Some of it is the pressure of so for example, right? So I had this conversation with someone the other day. I was on a show and they were asking me about Kyrie Irving, and they said, was there a chance that he was going to, they had heard, that there was a chance he was going to play for the Knicks. And I said, Kyrie was never playing for the Knicks. They said, and I said to them, the reason why is because he grew up, or at least knows of, the last time the Knicks were good was when Patrick Ewing was a player. You had Marcus Camby, you had Spree. Before that, or at least during the Ewing era, you had John Starks, right? So there's the pressure of, recreating that, knowing and watching the Knicks, right? And then you grew up seeing Melo. Melo was their OG, right? Melo is Kevin Durant and Kyrie's OG. Okay, so Kyrie grew up watching the Nets when they were in New Jersey. J. Kidd, Richard Jefferson, Keith Van Horn, Kenyon Martin.
Right.
But they still didn't have an identity. I mean, Dr. J is one of the greatest, to ever lace him up as a Net, as was Buck Williams. But at the same time, the Nets have now moved to Brooklyn. And so you're creating an identity. The Nets did have that playoff run in their inaugural season in Brooklyn, and Nate Robinson played spoiler. So comparatively, they have no identity. Everybody wants to move to LA or live in the borough of Brooklyn now. And when you look at the Nets and you look at the makeup of Kyrie and KD, they've done that. Comparatively, when you look at the Bulls, Michael Jordan's legacy is Michael Jordan's legacy. Before Michael Jordan's legacy, Dave Corzine, the late Jerry Sloan, there wasn't really and I mean this respectfully, it wasn't the same type of legacy or identity as Michael Jordan. So when you look at guys like LeBron, I know one of the things with LeBron, that's been often said is, both he and Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose discussed teaming up in Chicago. LeBron being from Cleveland, from the Midwest, he knows the level of validity that Michael Jordan as a Bull brings. But there's the pressure of being Michael or like Michael or delivering a championship. The last championship the city of Chicago has won is in 1998. So, you look at Chicago. Carmelo Anthony wears Jordan. I know that Melo may be playing in his last season. I'm told he's having certain conversations about certain things. I'll be reporting more about that later. But what I'll tell you is Melo being in the shadow of Michael Jordan, wearing his sneakers. Everybody can't do that.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Now, when you put it into perspective like that, like this is what I'm saying, just a regular person like me that's just watching ESPN, what's being reported, we always look at, we look at different scenarios. Like, oh man, we want to become Chicago. We're not even thinking about Jordan legacy. We just like, man, deliver us a championship. That's all we want is just a championship. But it is a lot of, I guess it is a lot of pressure trying to win, trying to live up to the expectations of Michael Jordan. That makes a lot of sense.
Like Melo, for example, Melo was born in Red Hook in Brooklyn. Moved to Baltimore, was a star at Towson Catholic, then ended up, starring at Oak Hill Academy in Virginia. A lot of not a notable people went there. Jerry Stackhouse, Steven Jackson, Rod Strickland, Brandon Jennings, and but like the Knicks, New York, him being an East Coaster, playing for the team that in the city you or where you were born, like that. Right. That's pressure, and I think he handled it well. Most people who play in New York, it's a situation where, cats, Derek Jeter handled that pressure well. Eli Manning handled that pressure well. Melo was put in that category. The only difference between Eli Manning and Derek Jeter is they won, representing, the 5 boroughs. So I think, for Melo, I think he handled that pressure well. I just think towards the end, with Phil Jackson and some of those other factors, it just got to be a point where it was time to go. And, you waive that no trade clause, you go to Oklahoma, and then, you're in a situation where, you're like the 4th option in Oklahoma, behind Russell, Paul George, and arguably Steven Adams.
Yep.
So then, you go to Houston, and then people think you're done, and you create that perception. I didn't say narrative. But then, he's finding that redeeming quality in Portland. I know that Philadelphia should have taken a bigger chance on Melo. I think they'd be in a greater position now had they taken that opportunity to pick him up. But, no such luck. But, Melo, I think, is a special talent that just, didn't win a championship. And, we'll see what happens moving forward.
Perfect. Do you, as an analyst, as a writer, as an editor, believe there is a such thing as being blackballed in the NBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nate talked about it on the podcast.
Yep. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's 450 players in the league. And I've seen talent like Iman Shumpert, Nate Robinson, J.R. Smith, Jamal Crawford, not in the league. What are the reasons behind being blackballed? Because, like I said, just a spectator watching sports, it seemed like they get the job done. JR's out there to shoot. Jamal been creating shots. Nate, he brings that energy, whether he's starting or off the bench. These are dudes that just want to hoop. They have the work ethic to hoop on any team. So what would majority be the reason of an NBA player getting blackballed?
Perception and fit.
Okay.
I would tell you that Nate Robinson talked about it, with me on the live that we did, where, there are choices he made or things he said, or people. The NBA is a very small, group of fraternity of brothers and coaches, and when one person says it, it gets echoed enough, it's perceived as truth, and I think that with Jamal Crawford in particular, everybody talks about his age, but he'll be the first to tell you he's not the typical 40-year-old
at all.
His last game as a member of the Phoenix Suns, he dropped 50 or 51.
He dropped 50. I want to say he dropped 50. He dropped 50
on the Dallas Mavericks. So, I think people always want to talk about like age with him, or he doesn't play defense. But like a lot of players in the NBA don't play defense. So I think I think it becomes to be this discussion that people begin to believe, and it really is unfortunate because it's messing up people's money. You
Yeah.
know, like 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 I don't play in the NBA, but I know that there were times for me personally as a writer where I know like people will say to me, "Yo, you're actually really a nice guy," or wow, you're really connected. Like, people doubt because you're not an ESPN or you're not a household name yet that you're not as effective as some of those guys. And I think just when you put your name on when you put your mouth on people's name, you're messing up money, you're messing up opportunity just because you just may be misinformed. Maybe somebody had a bad day. Maybe you just a hater in general. Like, you really have the opportunity, depending on who's saying what, to mess up somebody's money based off of that. And so that you got to be very careful, in any facet of life when you talk about somebody because, you just don't know. So I think, J.R. Smith, there's been issues of, questions of maturity and, things of that sort. But I think, I think him playing with Cleveland with LeBron, rehab his career. But I think people always use that scenario within the NBA Finals as proof that he's this or that, and I don't think that's fair.
I don't agree with that at all. I think it was more so just being in the moment and not really, and kind of just I really honestly feel like he spaced out, and he really thought that they were up. So yeah, I don't see how you can use that one scenario against somebody.
Yeah, but I think you also can't discuss basketball with everybody.
That is very true.
I had Ryan Hollins on the Scoopy Radio podcast today, and I said to him, "You can't talk basketball with everybody, just like you can't eat everybody's tuna or collard greens. You can't." And I think that with these GMs and a lot of these people that are in decision-making front office positions, analytics is giving a lot of people jobs, and I don't think that that's always indicative upon like knowing the game. Like, analytics does not give a litmus test of like end of game situations. Like if we believe that like analytics was everything, not to say it's not something, like, because you still need analytics for to just look at like the flow of games, like plus minus, and where specifically players' sweet spots are on the floor. Like when you're talking about if analytics was everything, when LeBron hit that shot against the Bulls, or when Derrick Rose hit that shot against the Cavs, like, do those things get examined within analytics? I don't know everything about analytics, but I also know analytics don't know everything about analytics. People don't know everything about game time, situations. So I just think you have to take both into account. But I think analytics has given a lot of people jobs in a cronyism of ways, and it's not always fair, and in a nepotism sort of way as well. I don't think it's always fair, but I think that basketball is a game of just runs. It's a game of rhythm. It's a game of relationships, and it's also a game based off of trust. It's just like, marriage. So I think at the end of the day, like, I think more attention for J.R. Smith should be paid to, his years in the game, his impact, and the fact that he is an NBA champion, that he is a father, the fact that, but I do think that the Lakers would be the best fit for him to rehab his career, and then he did have a workout, with the Lakers, and I reported that in January it didn't work out, but, the Lakers will probably have some more roster spots, if the season resumes, and assuming the season resumes, and, he may get that chance.
Cool. Speaking of the season resuming, how, I know, like you said it before, Kyrie is a person that's close to you in the league, and obviously he was very vocal about how he felt, which is, I believe, more athletes should, and it's, you do have your star caliber players that do speak out. LeBron speak out, D-Wade,
Sure.
Carmelo, but Kyrie is on the other spectrum, and there's nothing wrong with how he feels at all. But just to ask you the question, do you feel like you can still be able to play basketball and address social justice issues?
It depends on who you ask. A colleague of mine, Kelsey Nicole Nelson, I wrote about this today. She had the NFL Hall of Famer Warren Moon on her show, and he said the reason why Colin Kaepernick hasn't gotten signed is because the owners want to know: are you focused on social justice, or are you focused on being a starting quarterback on a particular team? Can you do both? In our minds, yes. I think it's no different than, Will Smith being able to rap, act on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and still do Men in Black. But, when it comes to, a lot of these owners and things of that sort, some feel as though it's a distraction. I think in the case of Kyrie Irving, I think Kyrie is misunderstood. And I think it began with the joke about the world is flat, but I think that that meeting with the 80 plus players that were on that conference call, what I can tell you is Kyrie is somebody who was fielding questions or concerns. People were calling his phone, trying to find there are players who don't feel comfortable playing in this bubble in Orlando, and so I think it gets mixed up in translation where you're looking at Kyrie, the world is flat, versus Kyrie, the vice president of the Players Association, who phone. And I think what also gets lost in translation, particularly on that phone call, I spoke to about 3 people, who were on that phone call, and they've shared that, there were other people on that call talking, but when you see a tweet from, insiders, and no disrespect to them, but who say Kyrie said that framing can make it seem like it's all about Kyrie, but what about all these guys who were on that call? And I think, like I have to break it down a little more simpler. It's no different than when a player, like with the interview that I did with Nate Robinson, where Nate talked about, the fact that, I asked him what a workout was like with a team, and he explained it. Most people hear workout. What exactly does that mean?
Right.
Same way. What does a conference call mean with a bunch of players? Is it Zoom? Is it everybody's calling everybody on a 3-way? Is it so? Those type of things have to kind of be broken down. So when you look at that situation, okay, Kyrie said what he said, but what about some of the other guys? The other thing is conversation. Me and you are on live talking. You don't know at which point people are coming in on that conversation. If you go back to playback, you'll see what led up to that. So he's, taking, from my understanding and from the information that I got, he's on a call. People are calling him, telling him his concerns. He's voicing those concerns. But the proverbial fly on the wall is only giving his point of it. It's going to villainize him every time. I'm not defending him. I'm just stating what I've heard from different points of views.
Right. Okay. Because it's just, and then especially the I can't remember what tweet it was that came out about Kyrie Irving, and then supposedly he didn't even say it. And it's a lot of he say, she say, as far as what's credible and what's not credible.
Well, I'll add this. The one thing that I've in phone conversations I've had over the course of the past week, one, Kyrie and I haven't had my afternoon coffee. Lakers guard.
Avery Bradley.
Yes, thank you. For some reason, I keep wanting to say Shabazz Napier. I don't know. So rewind. Kyrie and Avery Bradley are on the same page, and I think that when you look at media coverage, and this was voiced to me, it seems like this whole divide thing. I think we've never been in this situation before, right? So, I think when you have a conversation about just what you're fighting for, or what you're hoping to achieve or attain from this situation, it kind of reminds me of Colin Kaepernick in this sense. Is it about the flag, or is it about police brutality? In the same vein, when you're talking about Kyrie, respectfully, are you talking about are you talking about Corona, or are you talking about social justice? And I think when you look at Orlando, there are so many facets to that conversation, because you got a mix of people who don't want to play because they're concerned about health, but concurrently, you are discussing just health. or police brutality. Like there's just a mixed bag of who and what are doing what. You look at Trevor Ariza, who has decided he doesn't want to play because of a custody situation with his child. Most players are free in July. All players are free in July by this point because the season is over. This new normal has created assumedly a season resume at the end of next month. So I just think that with Kyrie getting those calls and fielding questions, most people don't understand. They just want to kick a player while he may be down or don't know all of the facts.
Gotcha.
So I think there's a lot there.
Do you feel like they should resume?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
No.
Okay. And to touch on that, I'm not sure if you saw the tweet that Pat Beverly put out about I don't want to misquote him, but it was on the lines of when LeBron James said that it's time to play, I guess we all playing. It was in the lines of that. And I know it was sarcasm because I know Patrick Beverly personally. So,
you do?
Yeah, he's from here. So
right.
I know him personally. So LeBron's voice says it speaks a lot, and because him and Kyrie were teammates, and it's like they have opposite perspectives. And I know it's a lot of guys in the league they want to play. They've been ready to play. They've been working out, having private workouts. But then again, you have the guys that they want to take full precaution, and there's so much that's going on. And I think that, like any individual, between COVID and the social injustice, it's mentally draining. So you probably really don't want to hoop. Like it's more than just hooping.
Or there's certain players and coaches that I've spoken with on and off the record who have shared with me they have not picked up a basketball or thought about basketball since March.
Wow. So how did, like, as a league, as an organization, how do you come to a conclusion to, okay, we're gonna move this to Florida, we're gonna finish out the rest of the season. Free agents can't play until the 2021 season. How's all of this stuff going on, but you still have half of the league that don't want to do it, and you got half the league that do. You give
them the choice to play or not play. So, like, if players decide they don't want to play, they'll still get paid. They just stay home. The NBA has given that option, but them playing is such small change compared to what the NBA could lose if they don't play. Do you know how much the NBA will lose if the players don't play?
Billions.
$2 billion if the NBA does not resume, they'll lose $2 billion. The other issue is this: the reason why they scheduled those exhibition games with those 22 teams, so you have the 8 teams from the East and the West that are playoff teams. Then you have like the additional teams, like in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards, who were a 9th seeded team. 1 through 8. 1 was Milwaukee, 8 was Orlando, 7 was Brooklyn, and so on and so on. Right. So then in the Eastern Conference, you have 1 through 8. 1 is the Lakers, 8 is the Memphis Grizzlies, and then you look at seeds like 9 through 11. You have the Portland Trailblazers, the New Orleans Pelicans,
yeah.
And then so you have those additional teams, and then you have the Phoenix Suns, who weren't even in that conversation, but you have tickets and views with Devin Booker and more. So when you look at seeds 8 through 11, if I'm not mistaken, there's like a 3 to 3.5 game difference in seeding. So like Memphis is there, but Portland and New Orleans are they're close. Portland dealt with injuries and more, but the point of my statement is this: The NBA and will get the rest of their money, their TV money, if they play. I believe it's 70 games. They're at like about 65.
Okay.
So they got to get that money. That's their logic. But I think that money is not everything. But it's there's a lot of money with this TV situation. It's funny. I said this years ago. If the NBA finds a way to monetize their own brand without having to go through networks, the best way to go about it would be YouTube and other streaming services where you don't have to depend on the networks. And then those networks, or you can go to other networks. You can go to Lifetime. You can go to like Sci-Fi Channel and stream games at like 2:00 in the afternoon, like baseball does at the beginning of the season or during the playoffs. Like they're locked into these big contracts with ESPN and TNT. And my man Daniel Artest just said DAZN times NBA. That's the boxing channel. But when you look at just the way that these contracts are set up, they have to fulfill it. But then, yeah. So what I was saying was like, during this time, like during the pandemic, for me, like like I said, I was pissed off to be great. Like I'll never forget. Like I had grabbed my clothes to take to the laundromat to do my laundry. And I just went through my phone while I was at the laundromat texting. And the first person I texted was Shaq. And I said to him, yo, you trying to come on my podcast? And he texted me back like, yeah, when you want to come on, just let me know. And for me, that that's at the foundation of just, like really going through my phone. There's I've had conversations with front office people in the league, once or twice a week about various things, both FaceTime and on the phone, like really using this time to like, focus, Karl Anthony Towns and his family, I stay in touch with them, check on them to see how, things going on. Like this is the time to just, not just in NBA, but like family, men relationships and, just like this time is really, useful if you make it useful. And, that's what I've been doing. I think, I don't know that you'll ever have time like this again, to really focus on what you need to do. I haven't been this still since my senior year of high school.
Man. When you talk on it now, I have to think back on just these past few months. Just with me working, it's been just nonstop, just constantly going. And I felt like, I don't want to say I was having a mental breakdown, but I was becoming mentally exhausted. And it was a little break, but I was able to like really step back and look at what I'm actually doing and see how can I be better when things pick back up than I was prior to this, prior to COVID, prior to, George Floyd, all of this stuff. And I see it now, and I know that like it's about to pick up soon because I believe like every state is pretty much opening up now. So it's just back hitting the ground running with everything that we have planned. And especially like in our perspective fields, we both do radio. So how are we branding ourselves to take it to the next level? Everything is about just progression. How can we progress to be better than we were? So that's how I did view it. But I kind of looked at it holistically, like just literally from the start of January, it was just like the energy was off coming into 2020. It just seemed off. And going to like my next topic, which is Kobe. I want to ask you, because I know you asked Nate Robinson, where was he exactly when he got the news on Kobe passing? Where were you exactly when Kobe passed?
I got a call from someone in Los Angeles asking me if it was true. And so I actually have Kobe's number, and I called him, and the phone just rang. And so I reached to some other people in his family, like to just see if what was going on. And one person in particular in this family, I sent him a text message. I said, "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but I'm praying for you." And then hours later, after we knew what was going on, that person in his family sent a text message and it just was like, "Thank you." But I was with the Lakers the day before.
Wow.
I was actually with the Lakers because The day before, the Lakers were in Philadelphia, and they were playing the Sixers, and it was a primetime game on ESPN, and with January 25th. And what happened was, I remember that was the 8 o'clock game. I got to the arena at like 4 o'clock, and spent some time with Jalen Rose, and because he did the broadcast, and I was in the back in the green room with everybody, and basically was in both locker rooms, Lakers and the Sixers, and I remember in the locker room, LeBron's locker was right next to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had on a t-shirt, like a long sleeve t-shirt that actually had Kobe Bryant with a skull and crossbones as his face. And in January, you talk about January, I had taken a trip to Mexico for vacation. I went to Cancun, and I learned what the significance of like the skull and crossbones were to people. So, me and KCP talked about that, the whole process with the skull and crossbones and more. But I just remember being in that locker room, and it was late. And one of the things that LeBron yelled in the locker room after the game was, "Yo, we not going home tonight. We going home tomorrow." And at that time when he said it, it was midnight. And if you go back to the reports and what was going on, Kobe and LeBron had their last conversation that night.
Yeah.
The Lakers had left that night to go back home to LA. Who's to say that those two would have had that conversation?
Right.
But like clear as day, he said that we're not going home tonight. We're going home tomorrow. And I just remember like when the news, like I told you, I made that phone call. Phone rang, and then I had asked a couple of members of that team, what was going on. They were on a plane. So what ended up happening was a month later, I was with Troy Daniels, who was playing for the Lakers at the time during All-Star. We sat down literally in a Neiman Marcus dressing room, and I interviewed him. We talked, and I asked him to tell me the whole story about how the Lakers found out about Kobe's death. And apparently, what happened was everybody was asleep because they were on that road trip that whole week. Started in Boston and then all the way through playing the Knicks, then the Nets, then Philly. And from what I was told, Dwight Howard yells on the plane, "Yo, Kobe's dead. Kobe died." And everybody's like, "Man, shut up. Kobe's not dead. What are you talking about?" And as guys started like turning on their laptops, going on their devices, the news came. And from what Troy Daniels told me, there were like people started crying. And Frank Vogel and LeBron led the team in prayer and put his hand on, walked through the aisle on the plane and led the team in prayer on the plane, I guess at some point as they were landing. And that to me was like, for me, I feel like the world has not been the same since the 25th of January or the 26th of January, but since the 25th of January. Yeah. But at the same time, like, me personally being able to document that and, people trusting me enough to tell me, numerous things, different things. I think that's both cool. I feel like I did my job, but, I also was a fan of Kobe Bryant. I also knew Kobe. I also understood the pedigree of Kobe at large, particularly because, I went to school right literally like 10 minutes, a 5 to 10 minute drive from Lower Merion High School. I went to college 5 to 10 minutes from Lower Merion, and I understood that culture. And, when it wasn't just felt in Los Angeles, it was definitely felt on the main line of Philadelphia at large. It's a sad loss. I knew Kobe. I know Kobe's dad. I spent time together with him in Dallas, Texas, and he dropped a lot of knowledge and a lot of gems on me. My hotel room was right across the hall from his. We were at a basketball exposure program, and we would just talk on the car rides to the gym and what we were doing, and I learned that Del Harris coached Kobe in LA, and Del Harris coached Jelly Bean in Houston when he played for the Rockets, and just conversations they had. Just for me, like I said, to document those things and to be a part of history, like those are things I get to tell my kids.
That's it's crazy, but it's incredible on your end to establish a relationship with Kobe. And um, it was just that Sunday was totally, it was different. And the crazy part is I was actually in LA when it happened. I was in Melrose, and I was literally sitting at a restaurant, and I got a group chat with a couple of my guys, and one of my guys was like, "Yo, is it true about Kobe? Kobe dead?" And I'm just like, "Man, he just put a tweet up last night, with LeBron." So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't see how that's possible. And sure enough, when we sit in this restaurant, everybody's phone goes off. Oh my God. And then you just hear the chat, oh my God, Kobe died, Kobe died, Kobe. Like it was so crazy. So when we left out, you can literally feel the energy of LA just being like sucked in. And it was just so dry.
Mm-hmm.
It was so dry. But my next question about that in particular, about the incident, when it comes to like credible sources, because it was just, I feel like something as big as that, I think for certain analysts and writers, they just want to get a story out. It's like it seems, for what it seems, they just want to get a story out. So when I heard that Rick Fox was on a helicopter as well, like how, I can only imagine how that made Rick Fox's family feel, and then the fact that it wasn't true. Like you putting people that wasn't even there at all in a situation, a catastrophic situation. Like how on the reporting side, like how does that make you feel?
I mean, Shams and Woes nailed it down. There were some people that I was speaking to that through the whole process, like I had gotten it. Just I wasn't gonna be the one to put that out there. Um, I will say that it's interesting you asked me that question because when I was in grad school, I interned at MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And interviewed at, I interned, which also had the duality of, interning at NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams at the time I was in grad school. And, it's funny because I've contributed to MSNBC here and there, but my supervisor during my internship was texting me throughout the whole process and was asking me about Rick Fox. And I didn't know. That I didn't know. And I wasn't going to just say yes just because that was the popular thing to say.
Right.
I think sometimes in this business, you have to be so careful because what you put out there could damage and affect you 10 years from now. And I think that this Kobe thing was a masterclass for journal students on the difference between getting it right and doing it for clout. And I'll say that I myself, even having relationships, people have the right to change their mind, as the case was with Kawhi Leonard. But I'll tell you that as I say that about the whole Rick Fox Kobe thing, I also take that mirror and shine it back on Kyrie last week. When a buddy of mine reported that, the whole thing about the group text with Kyrie and all that other stuff, I had conversations with who I needed to talk to, and I waited a day. Sometimes in the noise that is Twitter and everything else, your voice gets lost trying to chime in on what everybody else is chiming in on.
Got you.
And so after all that Kyrie news from that Friday before about the conference call, and then the group text with the Nets, I had fresh information that others didn't have because other people don't have those particular ties. And not only was I able to tweet stuff out, I was able to write the article, take the tweets, and read them in my article, and then that whole dialogue that I was tweeting, made it to the Undisputed as a topic on FS1. So I just think right now, it's like if I could use this example, it's almost like the movie Independence Day. Remember in Independence Day where everybody was lined up in that big traffic jam trying to get through the Lincoln Tunnel?
Yeah.
I think that for a lot of writers and a lot of influencers and a lot of just journalists at large and retired players are all trying to get through that tunnel. And I think that right now, it kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy of, the journalism class that I took when I was in grad school at Hofstra University, where this was in 2009 or 2010, where my college professor said, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep, you got it.
So my college professor said, like, in the next 10 to 15 years, it's not going to be about networks. It's going to be about brands. And it's about, reputable brands, respectful brands, and people who, are trusted. And, that didn't mean a lot to people. People kind of brush it off. And I mean this in the most respectful way when I say this, but ESPN without games has been difficult over the last few months. So a lot of new voices are being heard right now because there's no games on Turner. There's no games on ESPN. And so when I think about what my professor said, her name is Dr. Crystal Brent Zook. She was it was a feature writing class I took, and she said that it's about brands, it's about getting the message out there, it's about relationships. She was right. So I think, when you talk about sources and things, all sources are relationships that you develop with people over time. But then as you become more of a bigger name and, those that are, like you look at football, like Chris Mortensen, you look at Adam Schefter, you look at basketball,
Right.
You look at Woj, you look at Shams, you look at Chris Haynes, like, teams and leagues will give you stuff to break just because they know it's going to get out the right way. So it's a purge, if you will, of just who's who and what's what.
And it's interesting that you actually, because that was going to be my next question. Like, for a person that I know, when the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George news broke, the first person to break it was Woj.
No, it wasn't.
From what I saw it probably wasn't Woj.
Chris Haynes had it a minute and a half before, but Woj is going to get.
And that's the crazy part. So as a person, as a spectator, and you kind of just spoke on it, but it's like as a spectator, how do we know those are the people pretty much that break that news, that have those relationships with those teams and players, or how does that necessarily work?
It's interesting you bring that up, because I had this. I actually was in February was in an office of a front office person, and we actually discussed breaking news. I'm not going to say the person's name, but we talked about breaking news, and we talked about like how certain information is disseminated, and every team is different. For some teams, they'll give it to those guys before, and then they'll break that news. I've seen it on a Big Three level, the Big Three basketball league, where they'll give certain guys that scoop because it's going to get picked up. But then, like, you have relationships with certain agents where agents will give you stuff, or you deal directly with a player. Sometimes the source is a player himself. And sometimes you're just not. I'm very careful and protective of certain people of who I know don't like their name put to stuff. Because if you burn that relationship, you're not gonna get nothing that's even juicier. So it's just using common sense. Like, sometimes a source could be the cousin of somebody that's with that person every day. Sometimes that person could be the best friend. Sometimes the person could be their mother. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it's a player speaking to somebody, speaking to the reporter through that person. Like, and the thing is, you don't necessarily have to talk to the player to talk about that person. So sources come in a variety of different places and situations, I'll say. And at the end of the day, it's a relationship business. That's what basketball is. But I'll add this. Woj, Shams, Chris Haynes confirm. Oftentimes when I'm putting stuff out and I'm tweeting it, I'm telling you what's supposed, what's been discussed. Like, for example, like January of last year, I had a story where I said that the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks were having a conversation about Dennis Smith and that Dennis Smith might become a Knick. This was like January 13th or January 15th. Don't get me the line. I don't remember specific dates. I know it was mid-January. If I'm not mistaken, that trade was commenced like the 25th or 28th. The only part that I did not have was the part about Kristaps Porzingis. Because if you remember, the story went that Kristaps Porzingis met with the front office of the Knicks and wanted out of there. 5 minutes later, he was gone. But the general framework of that move, I had, Dennis Smith Jr. Coming to the Knicks. I had Tim Hardaway Jr. going to Dallas. I had all of that other infrastructure. I had no way to see the future and look at the crystal ball and know that, Porzingis was going to meet with, with the Knicks and that was going to happen. But I knew that was conversation.
Got you.
So it varies. When I'm speaking of things, they're supposed to. But then, for example, like last year there was a trade with the Lakers and the Pistons where it was like Svi and I can't remember all the pieces. It was a minor trade. It wasn't like an Anthony Davis or LeBron type trade. But I had that like 4 hours before Mainstream had it, and I got it because I had a friend text me and was looking over somebody in the front office's shoulder. They were completing the trade via text message, and the friend texted me and told me the whole framework of the story.
Wow. I think I can't remember who. I know it was the shooter on the Lakers, and I can't think of his name. I cannot think of his name.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about because I believe it was for Troy Daniels. I believe that trade was for Troy Daniels. But I can't remember his name. But he's a little
This is what it was. I'm gonna tell you right now. It was I'm loading the tweet. My tweet was on February 5th, 2019. Rumor in Pistons Lakers world. Reggie Bullock for Svi. Second rounder.
You said for who?
Svi Mihalik, I think his name is. Svi. I can't pronounce his name, so don't get me the line. But I got that trade because a friend saw the trade being commenced by someone in the front office over their shoulder, and they didn't have no screen protector.
That is okay. So I mean,
I tweeted it at 8:11 p.m. on February 5th, 2019. 4 hours later, Frank Iasola, between 2 to 4 hours later, Frank Iasola and Shams Charania had it, and people were in their tweets like, "Yo, Scoop already had that. Y'all late." And that's not to throw shade on them. I have respect.
Right, no.
But you just get things in a variety of ways.
Okay. So is there any reason why, like, I feel like you are heavily respected in the industry as far as, journalism, editing, everything. Is there a reason why, like, your names are not mentioned with, like, Woj? Like, because I feel like you have those connections. So, like, if I see, if it say breaking news, sources connected to Scoop B, this such trade is about to happen, or the Lakers, whatever big trade. Is there it's a reason for that? Why it's only a few chosen names to break those big trades?
Couple of reasons. One, I'm not at ESPN. Two, I'm not at Turner. And three, I think in the eyes of some people, the internet was my vehicle to make it happen. And I'm not a household name yet. And I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Like, I think, I don't take offense to that. But I think my work has become so good, it's undeniable. And I think to certain writers who went the traditional route, I'm perceived as a rogue, so to speak.
Gotcha.
And so I think new media is still very new, simply new. Like I didn't chase TV, I didn't chase radio, and I think that, but I do think controversy sells. I think for
Absolutely.
there are some things that I need to improve on with myself before I think God trusts me in that position, both professionally and personally. And I think that I've been using this time to really, really just better myself. Like lose weight. Like I bought a bike the other day. I'm waiting for it to come, and I think that just the aesthetics of that on camera, it would help my chances. But the work is still there. So like if anybody ever wants to discredit me or discount me, like the work is there. But I also do think that when it comes down to it, forging my own path pisses mainstream off in the sense of, okay, I didn't take any handouts. I worked hard. I invested in myself. I created a podcast out of a Timberland box, literally. And, like I had old episodes that were digitized into tapes. Like when I was a kid, it was my life's work. Like who does that? That's a hip hop model. That's a mixtape, Clue, Envy, K-Slay model, but at the
Yeah.
same, like, I've earned my right to sit at the table, but if they don't welcome me at that table, I'm gonna create my own damn table, and they still don't want to see what's at that table. I think when you do things your own way, it makes those people mad. And I'll tell you, like, growing up, I was one of the biggest Jay-Z fans out there. And so for me, when Jay was not looked at like LL Cool J, and LL Cool J was the model. He created Rockefeller Records. With Biggs, Dame, and Tata. And now,
Yep.
People in the same vein that when he was sitting courtside at games, he was giving a lot of free game, and then was like, what? Forget that. I'm gonna create Rock Nation and pay people, or people gonna pay me to consult. I find that, with the coronavirus pandemic hitting, a lot of people are reaching out to me trying to figure out how they can create a brand separate than just being a reporter. Like there's a lot of reporters I know that just report and may not have relationships, and that is no indictment on their skill. That's just what they do. But I find that a lot of people are asking me those types of questions. So when you ask me how come I'm not mentioned in that same vein, I also think I don't aspire to be. Like at the end of the day, like breaking news and some of that stuff is like drugs. Like people get a high off that. Like there were points last year, like when I was reporting stuff like that, and I knew I was right, and people gonna tell me I'm wrong. It's like you don't even know me, but at the same time, like it kind of like turned me into somebody that I wasn't. Like
Gotcha.
rather than like enjoying the game, it was just about being right and screw everybody else. But what about the actual game? Like to me, that wasn't a good feeling. Like I actually enjoyed this year in particular, going to arenas, going to cities, leaving, come home, and actually watching the game. Not just watching snippets or highlights, like actually watching the game. So for me, like I think that passion for basketball, I've always had as a kid. I want to still feel that way. At points last season, just breaking stuff and getting stuff right, sometimes it just wasn't fun anymore.
Gotcha. That's real. Like I said, I think what stood out the most is forging your own path. And I think as people, we kind of just get stuck into the norm of what everybody else is doing. Like, oh, this is the way, but it's multiple ways to still be successful as you are, even though you probably don't even feel like you haven't even reached your plateau yet, which I feel like you don't, because I feel like you still got a lot more left, and you've given so much to sports and just journalism in general. You have given so much, and you still got a lot more left. So I'm definitely, like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to more of your work.
Thank
But
you.
one thing that stood out to me, I, I want to say it was a slam. You ended up talking to Samaki Walker about Kobe.
Yeah, when he sucker punched him.
I never even knew about that story.
Right.
So what? So how like so it was Kobe owed him he owed Kobe $100 or something like that.
So basically, I was at CBS Radio, and I had a show called Around the Scoop, and lasted for a season. You know, it was on the same CBS network that, you know, Elliot Wilson and B-Dot had with Rap Radar, and, you know, Nori had with his show, Drink Champs. And basically, like, you know, Samaki had followed me on Twitter, and I DM'd him like, yo, I'm trying to get you on the pod. Let's work. So when I told one of my homies, yo, we about to get you know, we're about to get Samaki on the show. My homie Tyrone said to me, yo, ask him about the time he and Kobe got into that fight. And I was like, all right, bet. So I text him, or rather I talked to somebody. I asked him before when he called into the station, yo, you feel comfortable talking about it? He was like, yeah, like nobody ever asked me about that. So like I asked him, and it hit TMZ. The funny thing about it was, like, I walked it across TMZ's desk. So long time ago, a friend of mine had called me and told me a story about an elevator fight that had happened. I can tell it now, but like Johnny Manziel, somebody was on an elevator at this place that I would stay at sometimes when I go to Cleveland. And basically my friend broke it up, and he called me like early Friday morning, was like, yo, don't tell that story. Like, don't tweet it, don't write about it. And I respect his wishes. I didn't. This was years ago. But I did have the number to this particular. I knew somebody who knew somebody that had access to the video of the footage, and they were like, I can't do it because they'll know it's me. Da 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 da. I had called TMZ and was like, yo, you guys actually pay for this? Like, they told me how much they pay. So what ended up happening was I still had that contact to TMZ. So when the situation happened with Samaki telling that story, I emailed TMZ that contact that I had, and they were like, "Yo, we want that story," because if you remember, the same day that story hit was around the same time that Blake Griffin sucker punch thing happened, and so it was within the news cycle. That was in 2016. So what ended up happening, I walked it across TMZ's desk, and they blasted it out.
That's crazy.
So when you talk about respecting somebody's wishes,
yeah,
and I'm mad because when that Johnny Manziel thing happened, like somebody called me on a Friday, on Monday it was breaking news. I knew about it that Friday, but because my friend asked me to chill, I just did. But I still have to contact.
But you have to, yeah, I would say you still have to contact those. So that's crazy. That's crazy. And I like it's crazy how like these stories, because I always want to know like how TMZ even get most of these stories, and I'm pretty sure it's from people that were there or probably know of someone that was probably a part of it, and they pay for it.
Well, TMZ has a few guidelines. Like I'll tell you, like some years ago, I was at a function, and I know a couple of photographers at TMZ on the LA side. I know a couple of videographers, and like some rules that they have. Like if you notice, TMZ does not go in buildings; they always catch people outside. That's their legal guidelines. There's some reasoning behind it, but they always are invited. Like I remember in the fall, I was in and out of LA in September and October. And I remember when I landed at LAX, and there was a photographer that was standing like right, like when you go down the escalator. Have you been to LAX before?
Yeah.
Then you go down the escalator, and then you gotta like, you call your Uber, but then you gotta like walk.
You gotta walk
like
across.
stand.
Yeah.
So like there's a photographer standing there, snap. And when I remember, like this was in like October when I got to LAX, like snap. Yo, that light blinded the hell out of me. But they like those guys have a list of all the people that are arriving and at what time. Like after like the guy took my after he took my picture, and we sat and we talked, and he took other people's pictures. Like we sat and we talked just about like the process. Like publicists send their clients like itinerary so that they are videoed and pictures are taken of them while they're at LAX.
Wow. We're really getting to school. Because Because I promise you, like we we wouldn't like if maybe it's just me, but like I'm telling you, I didn't know like half of this stuff even goes on. Like as far as breaking news, publicists, like this is that's a interesting field to say the least. But I guess it's more so one of those industries where you just get in where you fit in it also too. So I don't know.
It's a relationship business. It's a lot of favor for favors. It's a lot of like you know gatekeepers, but you knowing who to deal with directly. Like it's a very who knows who and who knows you business.
Got you. I got two more questions for you.
Take your time.
Going looking at how the NBA is structured now, where you have two, I don't want to just single them out, but they're like the face for the rookies. You got Ja Morant, you got Zion Williamson. Where do you see that you didn't cover? I would say you didn't at least cover at least 3 decades of basketball. So you didn't see the transition from the late 90s, 2000s, 2010. You didn't see it. What do you see in Ja Morant and Zion Williamson that you haven't seen in any of the greats prior to them?
I don't think that's a fair assessment because I think that their stories are still being written. And I think that Zion is in a situation where he is not played as many games as Ja. But his impact coming in the gate exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley told me a few months ago, yo, if they give Zion that MVP, I'm gonna blow a gasket. And it seems like to me, the league is really trying to give that to him, but they're trying to. But I understand it from a business perspective because they're trying to create that next Bron. But I think if I had to make a comparison or what it makes me feel like, my freshman year of college was Melo and LeBron's rookie year in the NBA.
Yeah.
And so when I look at that situation, it reminds me of Melo and Bron. And Melo used to be charged up to go at Bron. In that matchup will go on for years. But then I look at Magic and Bird was where I think they were trying to make Melo and Bron be like. And if you remember, Magic and Bird saved the league from being bankrupt in 1979.
Okay.
We enjoyed the golden era of basketball in the 90s because of Michael Jordan and the financial impact. Particularly because of Clinton being in office and just this boom. This was when people started investing in the .com era, and guys like Mark Cuban, made out like a fat rat, or pack rat. But I think the Zion and Ja Morant, consensus is still being written. And I really sat and I watched Ja Morant a few months ago. I watched him play. He has a good supporting cast around him, and Jaren Jackson Jr. And some of those other guys on that team. And I think they're an exciting young team to watch in a small market. Like when you think of small markets, you think of the Milwaukee Bucks. You don't necessarily think of the Memphis Grizzlies, and you don't think of don't sleep on them. I think.
Yeah.
Don't think they're Prince Hakeem working at McDowell's. These are legitimate players, and I think they're there for a while. But the thing I like about Zion is I think they have that wow factor because of who he's teamed with. You look at Brandon Ingram, who's arguably the NBA's most improved player of the year. Who made an All-Star team this year. You look at Lonzo Ball. You look at Zion in that system, like JJ Redick. You got some studs on that team. So the Anthony Davis trade. I think when we look back on it, it could benefit both teams, but in different ways.
I agree. Now, and going back to you and Nate conversation, I think Nate said that Zion Williamson remind him of Charles Barkley with athleticism.
He said that he's Zion Williamson with Vince Carter's legs.
Vince Carter's legs. What and what we haven't seen a player like Zion probably, I want to say, since LeBron. Just as that coming in the league, that's LeBron wasn't even that big. He was tall, but he wasn't that big.
I think they
But
forced the Zion thing in a way that it came organic with LeBron.
okay,
But I think,
that's a big point.
but I'm partial because I grew up reading about LeBron and Slam. These kids grew up watching Zion digitally on social media, and I remember hearing stories about like Zion and LaMelo Ball in that AAU game. It was standing, it was a summer game, standing room only. Like that's their Slam magazine moment. So I don't want to be one of those older guys that's older looking down on these young guys like it doesn't matter. And maybe for those younger people, they see it that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there any player that resembles Zion in your opinion?
I think just like LeBron is a collection of different people. Like when you look at Bron, to me, you know, I think Bron is a more fit leader, Magic Johnson. But then you slice that onion even more. You know, he's got Scotty appeal. You know, particularly the way he's able to handle the ball, the way that he is able to play playmaker. I think Scotty was a better defender than LeBron, but Scotty also couldn't pin shots on the backboard like Bron either.
Right.
But I also think there is a level of Oscar Robertson that is Bron. I also think that there's portions of watching Bron sometimes that reminds me of Charles Barkley, the way he's able to play with his back to the basket, and the way that he's able to play like a guard, despite the fact that he's a freight locomotive. But when I look at Zion Williamson, the Charles Barkley analogy is easy, but Charles will be the first to tell you that Zion needs to slow down. He can't always run 100 miles an hour. When I look at Charles Barkley, I often saw guys that came after him that reminded me of him, like Corliss Williamson, Clarence Weatherspoon, just certain guys. And it's interesting because if I had to make an analogy to somebody that I think was ahead of their time, it would be somebody by the name of Andre Blatch. Andre Blatch was a 6'10" center that was playing off wings on both sides, but would often go right. When I look at Andre Blatch, Andre Blatch reminds me of really he's just his own player. He was a taller T-Mac that just couldn't stay in shape. But I think his best days were when he played in Brooklyn. I had a chance to cover him, during the 2012-2013 season. When I look at Zion Williamson, I see a guy, who was like Charles Barkley with Andre Blatch handles that can speed and dunk like at his size. Like that's like seeing like a unicorn, like a 300-pound quarterback. Like you just remember that guy that played at Kentucky some years ago that was like a 7-foot, 300-pound quarterback.
Yeah, he's 300 pounds. Yeah, huge. And one of his kind, basically.
Zion is just something you've never seen before, but like when you see it, you know it, and you observe it, and you watch it, and you just enjoy the moment. That's how I feel when I watch like LeBron. Like I actually enjoy watching LeBron James play basketball. Like it's like, to me it's art. Zion Williamson, admittedly I did not watch Lion games. I watched him. I was at the Rising Stars game, the World versus the U.S. game when he played, and I felt like they were forcing him, like they weren't playing any defense. They just wanted to see him dunk. It just did not seem organic to me. But I also don't hate on that brother either, just because he's in his own lane. I think sometimes we get so used to just putting people in boxes, and they have to be like this person. I think it's enjoyable to watch people be more than just one thing, or just be their own guy.
Right. Yeah, I want to see like I definitely want to see a healthy Zion. I believe that him and Ja will be better next coming. As far as like future talent coming into the league, I want to see how LaMelo Ball, how he comes into the league. I know you playing overseas is totally different from playing in the league. You playing, like I said, you playing with 450 of the best players, the best of the best. So just to see his game translate over to the league, Cole Anthony as well, Cassius Stanley, all these guys. I want to see how the talent would be, because I feel like we have a talented league right now. I feel like, you still got Kawhi, you still got Giannis. This is, LeBron is LeBron, but you still got Kevin Durant, you still got Kyrie, you still got a plethora of players that can really score the ball at a high efficient rate. But the younger guys, like when it's time for the KDs and the Giannis and the Stephs to venture off into the next plateau in their chapter in their life, will the league still be as great as it is now as far as player potential? Do you see that?
To be determined. I think I don't want to come across as one of these old heads that just they have to be like this person, that person. But I do think that as Landon Buford said below, LaMelo is a better shooter than Zoe coming in. Yes, but I also think Lonzo's
IQ for the game is at a.
Yeah, I think Lonzo leaving LA was a great move for him, just from getting away from LeBron and just being him. But at the same time, like, I think Lonzo. Did I say LaMelo? Did I say Lonzo?
You said Lonzo for LA.
Yeah, I think Lonzo in LA was ultimately a showcase and a trading chip for what the Lakers were ultimately going to do. That was a 2 to 3 year process, with the Lakers and getting LeBron James. And I think that final piece was when LeBron came, and Kuzma was the guy that they were trying to shop and move around, and ended up staying. But I think Lonzo Ball is a runner, and I just think New Orleans fits his skill set in a way that LA styles with him. But it takes a special player to be able to get their stats off while playing alongside LeBron. The only person who's been able to do that pretty well is Kyrie.
Yeah.
Somebody just said in the comments that Nikola Jokic has COVID.
Was it reported, or is that just an assumption?
Somebody just tweeted, sources, Nuggets center Nikola Jokic test positive for coronavirus. So Woj.
Well, I would say he's still overseas. So I mean, and I believe a second wave has hit overseas.
Woj just tweeted, reporting with Brand Windhorst, Nuggets star Nikola Jokic tested positive for the coronavirus in Serbia, and his return to the U.S. is temporarily delayed. He's been asymptomatic since positive last week. Jokic is expected to be cleared to travel to Denver within a week.
Speaking of Denver is a special team. You got with Jamal Murray, Jokic. You got a couple of studs over there. Mm-hmm. What is it that the Nuggets are missing to get them over that hump? I feel like they have critical pieces there.
You're missing the fact that LeBron James is still not playing in Cleveland.
There we have it. But even still, even before, I mean, you still have Houston. Well, that's a whole different topic with Houston. Houston is a whole different topic. You still got the Clippers. You got the Clippers. So it's just like, what is it? Denver has a complete team. I like Malone as their coach. I feel like he's a great coach. And the team is, like I said, the team is reasonably young, outside of Paul Millsap, but the team is young. But I feel like they're missing. I don't know if they're missing a key component as far as like a second scorer, or because you got pieces around you.
Imagine Paul George playing in Denver. That'd be a tough team.
That would be huge. But I feel like in order for Jamal Murray to get going, he needs the ball in his hands. I haven't seen Jamal Murray play off ball since Kentucky. And that's because they could never get the ball out of Tyler Euler's hands. So with him being a primary ball handler, Paul George can't play off the ball, but would he be as efficient is the question. they do a lot. They do a lot of they do a lot of plays through Jokic. So and Jokic he's one of probably
He's
the
the
best.
point center.
Yeah, he's the best passer on that team, in my opinion. Will Paul George be able to get as many looks as he does now in LA? It, mm, it's debatable. It's one of those what if factors though, but that would be a tough team to play against because they can defend. Paul George is definitely a top 3 two-way player in the league. That would be tough. That would be tough.
Word.
Speaking of what are your finals predictions? Since now that we see that the NBA will resume, you have any finals predictions?
I mean, I'm still gonna go with the top 2 teams in the East and West, the Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers.
Any reason behind why? Because I'm a LeBron fan, so I may be biased. But like I said, the Clippers is not a team that can be slept on.
No, not at all. But I think that the Lakers, to me, has done a good job, and not just preparing the last couple of years, but I think they've been battle tested throughout the course of the season. You know, where they're going to get this player, where they're going to waive this player. We're going to like every piece that they've added has just been a great piece of the puzzle, and they've spent a lot of time together. They've been playoff battle tested before they even as a team went into the playoffs, and they've added experience. You know, adding Danny Green, adding Anthony Davis. You know, Frank Vogel has experience. Deep into the playoffs, and adding a viable coaching staff. You know, Lionel Hollins, who's an NBA vet, Jason Kidd, who has been playing in the NBA Finals, and Phil Handy, a guy who will be looked at great lengths this offseason as a potential head coach or an assistant coaching candidate. And then you go look at this situation. Just LeBron. I really do feel like Steph Curry and the Warriors kind of took his shine during his moment when he was supposed to be in his zenith.